It is Friday, June 5th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.
Hello and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I am your sole host today, coming to you from the Beer Temple on a Friday at an unusual time. I think it's just after 11 a.m. By the way, my name is Chris Quinn, and thanks for coming or listening, downloading, however you want to put it, to yet another episode of the Beer Temple Podcast. We've got a long-time regular guest. We're just going to do a one-on-one, something that we've been talking about doing for a while, so I will get right into it. And, I certainly have to introduce you because you can't introduce yourself. That's only for first-time guests. I guess... Nostra Douglas, is that probably how you would prefer? That's your preferred name, just generally speaking.
That's what's on my business card. So.
Yeah. So what's up, Doug? How are you, Doug Veliky? What's up?
Good to be back. I think it's been since the predictions episode.
Yes.
And, it's kind of almost mid-year now, so
maybe
check in on some of that.
Yeah, see how that's going. That's true. Yeah, we probably should see how some of those are going. So I think it was maybe even your idea just to kind of have a pretty informal one-on-one podcast. So we've been trying to make it work with our schedules for months.
Yeah, we did this one other time, and it was fun. I don't think we knew what we were going to talk about, but we just kind of kept batting it back and forth. And fun time. Figure
we'll do it again. So we are set up in a different part of the room today, so there's a little bit of road noise in the back, but that's okay. I mean, we live in Chicago. It's a busy city, so here we are. But yeah, what's new with you, man?
Yeah, I just passed the 1 year mark since leaving Revolution Brewing, so it's been
Has it
about
been a year already?
13 months. Yeah,
wow.
So
does it feel like it's been that long, or
it feels about right?
Okay,
a lot has happened in the last year. It's been very busy. Starting a new business with a business partner, still a two-person business. So it's been a lot to figure out, but has been a lot of fun and rewarding and all that. So, currently trying to have 3 pots going. I've always, I think it was since 2013, I started making social media content about beer. That, of course, evolved as my role in the beer industry changed, kind of moved the content along with it, but I've been doing that for a while and still do. And to some extent, put more into it, have a little more time to dedicate to it than having this longer form beer blog that I do, Beer Crunchers. Still keeping that going and really trying to accelerate that and make that more consistent. And it's turned into more of a newsletter now in terms of how most people read it. But more importantly, had a chance to start a business with my neighbor, Jeff Agassi, who's formerly of Molson Coors.
And he's cool with the name of the company being Veliky and Other. He's okay with that.
The company is called BrightBev.
My researchers must have gotten that wrong.
Yeah, our kids were put on the same youth baseball team a few years ago. That's how we met and spent a lot of long days together in lawn chairs watching our kids play baseball and talking shop about the beer industry. And we both realized we had this similar passion around what it takes to be successful in the world of distribution, especially for young upstart brands. I love talking trends, as you know, and seeing what new entrants to the beverage alcohol space are doing. Jeff is equally as curious and has different background, different skill set as mine, but we both have this connection of our past to distribution. I learned the business from working at Reyes Holdings, the biggest beer distributor in the country, had this like financial and operations role there, running their audit department. Whereas Jeff on the Molson Coors side, he was involved with the M&A when they acquired a lot of craft brands. He eventually led them. And in the middle, he was in charge of their national distributor relations at Molson Coors. So just, very intimately familiar with all the things you need to do to successfully launch a brand, court distributors, launch a brand with them, and then be successful working in that house. So we created a startup of our own that's helping young entrepreneurs early in their journey who have a lot of times a big idea, and there's never been fewer roadblocks to starting a new beverage brand. There's more capacity out there, more people willing and able to make your product in a pretty quick fashion. There's more marketing resources than there's ever been. We just felt there's not a lot of help out there for navigating the world of working with distributors, and with our expertise specifically beer distributors, which is where a lot of categories are going now beyond beer as well. With the rise of spirit-based canned cocktails, those kind of started with wine and spirits distributors, and now a lot of those are moving to work with beer distributors. So we've kind of been able to work with a lot of different brands who all kind of see a beer distributor as the ideal route to market.
Why do you think that is? That beer distributors versus like a spirits distributor?
It's kind of, I think an easy way to put it would be the slow dimes versus fast nickels business model. Wine and spirits distributors are great storytellers. They're good at managing a huge list of SKUs. Not that beer distributors don't have a increasingly growing list of SKUs, but comparatively, it's much smaller. So the service levels of a beer distributor are much more frequent and cater more so to something in a can that's drank in a similar occasion as a beer versus a $80 bottle of tequila, which is just a different skill set to have under a distributor to make that work at scale. So I think a lot of these new categories that are not beer but are, working in the same way as beer are finding that that's an attractive route for them.
It's interesting. I hadn't thought, I guess you inherently understand it, but I hadn't ever specifically thought about it, that it's like an occasion distributor. It's like the same occasions.
Exactly.
For beer and for an RTD and something like that versus, like maybe, Tito's or tequila or something like that out of a bottle, or even a bottle of wine or something like that.
And just how the distributor sales teams are used to selling, it's just more of a similar product to them.
Interesting.
It's hard to be good at both. Beer distributors are increasingly becoming spirits distributors now through M&A, and it's just a natural side of their business they're beginning to build out and making a lot of progress quickly. This wasn't much of a thing a few years ago. Little bits here and there, but now it's becoming, major with this huge RNDC company disbanding and their assets kind of being spread around to beer distributors. So a lot of beer distributors are now working on integrating major spirits brands into their portfolio.
Huge shakeup, especially in the wine and spirits world. Just like massive shakeup in distributors. And we talked about it a little bit on our show, but it's not really our focus point. But that's interesting. Now, do you think that, let me rephrase it. I think there might be an opportunity for some of these new wine companies, especially some of these like wine on the go, wine in a box, wine in a bag, but like kind of elevated product inside of it. They're trying to be of the same occasion as you would pick up a six-pack or very similar. Let's say the Venn diagram has a lot more overlap with a six-pack of beer or a 12-pack of beer than with a $40 or $30 bottle of wine, or even a bottle of gin or something like that. I'm curious if some of those brands would be interesting to see if some of those could go to the right type of beer distributor. Now, I'm not saying a Miller Bud house, but someone who's a little bit more boutique-y, but still a beer distributor, could kind of place that in a successful way that some of these wine companies have just struggled with some of those types of brands.
I mean, I don't see why the distributors, if we're talking about smaller boutique beer distributors, I don't see why they wouldn't be interested, because there's never been more interest right now in like novel formats for alcohol.
Yeah.
And the smaller the brands you are working with, the less chances you're going to have those, because those are usually very tricky to, you don't see a small brand making like an outrageous new format, like Sam Adams or Boston Beer just released a new product that's in like a light bulb shaped screw off container. Like you just have to be really big to launch something that unique in terms of packaging. So if there's a way to take something that isn't that, hard to outsource, like a boxed wine, but kind of reimagined in terms of more less Franzia in 2000 and more, what could that look like?
Yes.
Maybe feel a little more premium, like not feel as cheap, just like a different angle toward it. And could that work today? I don't see why not. And I would absolutely think they'd want, everybody thinks of their book of business as a portfolio, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to have some novel formats, and if you're a distributor trying to cover as much ground as possible but stay in your lane, why you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for that. I mean, that isn't kind of what we were talking about with your direct business model, but maybe, I mean, if it's kind of the path to market. Every
new client that we begin working with, we always do the same thing first, which is work on how they talk about themselves. In other words, how they're positioning themselves, and specifically with the angle of with a beer distributor. Because sometimes we might get handed a deck that's really meant for like an investor, like they're trying to raise capital, and this is what they would show an investor.
Sure.
But it's not necessarily speaking the distributor's language. And it's like, you got to talk about how you're solving a problem for them. You're not just solving a problem for a consumer or an investor or a retailer, but how are you specifically solving something for the distributor versus sharing something with them that maybe has a good brand to it, but they'll say, well, I can take you back in my warehouse and show you 12 more of these. How are you actually different? How are we going to sell your brand amongst everything else we're selling? And that can be different from for the same brand between different distributors, but making sure that they're talking about themselves and positioning themselves in the right way to increase their chances. That's the whole point of our business, is increase the odds of success, increase, in this case, the odds of engagement, and the distributor kind of mentally getting there and seeing how, this is a value add for us versus just cannibalizing with something else they're already trying to sell.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to take since it is in the middle of the day, my day is much more busy than typical. I'm going to literally take like a 2-minute break, and then we're going to come right back. All right, we're right back. Just had to, fire off some text. Just had to scream at some people. You know how it is now. No, I'm sorry about that. We were just talking about the relationship with the distributor and how it's probably not something that people think about unless they are coming from an understanding of that area already, which is probably not the case. You have people who are ideas people, maybe some production and ideas, and then but there's a whole other element to it, and that's when what's the name of the company again?
BrightBev.
BrightBev. Yeah. That's when BrightBev, I guess.
And sometimes some come from that background, and just now they've become a founder of a brand. They just don't want to spend their time on all of that.
Oh, got it.
So they just want
outsource
help.
Yeah, I guess that's
like the third reason.
Yeah, no, and that's legit. They know how much goes into it, and they're like, you know what? Let's just have someone who specializes in just that and can focus on it and stuff like that. I find myself a little bit in that world with like marketing right now. It's like, I can do it, but I really just need someone who can help me do it. But it's also, as I'm sure that these people understand, scary to kind of hand over that to somebody as well, because it's a lot of responsibility for someone like you to help them kind of guide them in the right way. So, yeah, how has it been? How's the last 13 months been for you?
Good. It's been exciting. I mean, the first 4 to 5 months, I'd say, was a lot of business development, figuring out how to just explain what we're trying to do, because it is hard to do in an elevator speech kind of way.
Yeah.
So really just, practicing that and trying a few, working with people in different ways and really finding what works and just where's there the least resistance to getting started.
Yeah.
And we pretty much found that in most cases it makes sense to try to figure out what we could do to help in 3 months so that we can be very specific as to how far we think we can get in that amount of time and give them a chance to work with us, see the kind of value we can add. And I don't think we've ever had anybody not continue on after that. So it's been going really well. The biggest thing we learned was, just don't make it too complicated to getting started, because what we're trying to do can be very big picture sounding and take, years for it to fully flesh out and develop.
Yeah.
But just find a way to show value quickly and then go from there has been the way to go.
Yeah, a lot of those beverage companies that have seemed to explode right out of the gate, in reality, probably didn't. I mean, there's some, I guess, who did. Like, I guess Garage Beer didn't, but then they also did once they took on, once they kind of took on those investors, then it exploded when they took on the Kelseys. But other than that, it seems like most of them, before they explode, you see that there was at least a couple of years of, planning and setup and execution.
And one thing that isn't always differentiated between, and I've learned from these conversations that it really needs to happen more, is that there's a big difference between someone founding their first beverage company, which happens a lot, who has no experience in the industry. They have really good experience and background. They've done something to put them in position to be able to take this risk and do it, but they have not built or maybe even worked at a beverage company. Then you've got something like Garage Beer, who is bringing together a team who has done this or something this complex before. And you just think about, okay, what speed can this one go at versus what speed can this go at? And obviously it depends on what it is, how foreign what they're trying to build is to the consumer, and that affects how fast it can go as well.
Sure.
It's like, sometimes I see the one trying to compare themselves to the other, and it's like, well, don't compare yourself to them. Those are 20-year vets who have put this together, and that's why they have all these relationships. They can move faster. You're starting from scratch. You have no infrastructure, and you have to build it out slow. You just can't compare your speed, the speed you can go at to them. It'll drive yourself crazy doing that.
There's also people who say, and I don't know if this is I don't have as much insight into the RTD world, but I could see, there's also people who, I see this a lot in breweries, even if they don't say it, you get the feel that, we want to be the next Hill Farmstead. We're trying to be do the Hill Farmstead model. We're trying to do the Treehouse model, or maybe we want to be Stateside or something like that in the RTD world, and be but they got lightning in a bottle. They hit the lottery, not necessarily out of luck. Of course, I think there always is some luck and timing and just involved, but if everyone wants to be Treehouse.
They were well positioned to jump when the demand was there. They had the infrastructure somewhat built, and they were built to move fast.
And they were making the widgets that people wanted at that time, and they had, the marketing and the branding or just the brand. And I say that even for, Hill Farmstead and stuff like that. That's very much a brand that people want. They wanted that aesthetic and that romance. And for Stateside, it's the same thing. They just people were attracted to it, and if it was that easy, then there'd be no opportunities because the big guys would just fill all those little niches.
And they made it easy for what they're doing to travel, because it's vodka lemonade or vodka tea and beachy vibes, and that's it. There's no deep storytelling. But that's not to say that deep storytelling can't work. Long drink just sold, which is kind of the opposite. What is a finished long drink? How would anyone know that? It was made for the Olympics, I don't know, 75, 80 years ago or something like that. But they kind of went deep in storytelling and more of a narrow geographical range and built a big company and attracted the interests of the owners of White Claw and had an exit themselves. So
yeah, it's interesting. Like going to our predictions, I remember I predicted, I think 2 years or 1.5 years ago, that there would be a lot of small local RTD companies kind of becoming the local RTD. And the reason I thought of that was because I had gone to Delaware and back home to Philadelphia and saw that this, Surfside, I was like, oh, the Surfside is like all over the place here. Much like several years earlier, I was like, oh, High Noon in Massachusetts is like blowing up. It's like a thing. So there's going to be all these things around, not realizing no, I was just seeing the beginning of the one that was going to kind of start to really make moves and start to dominate in both those. Yeah. And it's hard to know, do you just invest in High Noon or do you look for other ones? Because I think it is tough out there to know what is going to happen. And I think more recently, it's more likely that at least first one is going to blow up, and then there might be a couple that have space behind it to be real players. And who knows in the long run who's going to be the biggest? But because certainly High Noon wasn't the biggest at first. It was kind of White Claw was dominating, and now High Noon is doing so great. And they're one is seltzer and one is a spirit based, but it is interesting.
I think we're very much in 2015. To use a craft beer analogy, we're in 2015 for RTD, spirit-based RTDs with acquisition activity. Like, they're happening fast. But unlike craft beer, there's only so many that are pretty big and attractive for one of the real big guys who all want in this now. Like, this is where a lot of attention is. This is what's growing fastest by far. And there's been it was Beatbox sold, then maybe not in this order, Long Drink, and then the other one was Monaco. And these are different. If you think about Long Drink and having like a story to it, Monaco is very much like 2 shots in a can. This is more Voodoo Ranger convenience store.
When did they sell? A couple of years ago, right?
No, like a few months ago.
Really?
To Molson Coors. Molson Coors had never had had one of these, and they just bought it in the winter. It was like maybe in March.
That's surprising because they had some really. I remember a couple of years ago I went to the NASCAR race here in Chicago. I'd never been to a NASCAR race, and when in Rome, I was drinking Busch Light for sure. Like that's what you drink when you're there. But they did have, I think, a seltzer, and it was Monaco, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is the Bud. This is who Bud is trying to push. It's just what I assumed because I figured this was all tied. Bud has a lock on this event because, you've got Busch and NASCAR. I would have never guessed that they were a privately owned company at that point. So they just sold a couple months ago to Coors.
To Molson Coors, yep.
Yeah, they were a big one. Definitely I've never had a Buzzball, but it reminds me of maybe a Buzzball in a can type thing.
And they sold, I think, maybe 2 years ago to Sazerac.
Yeah.
But there's only a few big ones left that are independent and large.
Yeah.
Like it's Stateside, like you mentioned, with Surfside. It is Carbless is a big one that's started out of Wisconsin, and husband and wife team, and they're very, very large and will be an expensive buy for somebody. But those are two of only a handful that are like big, attractive ones to bite off for a big company. So could see a few more fall. But yeah, I think what you were saying about your prediction is interesting, and I've been kicking around a related prediction that's more not just like local or regional RTDs in terms of, from where it originates, but really trying to come up with what is the local flavor to your region that makes sense for you to make this, but not someone on the other side of the country. And this
Is
isn't
there a local regional RTD flavor? Is
well, like an example, and I'm not saying this is like a juicy opportunity, but like the brandy old fashioned in Wisconsin, and this isn't new. There's probably 10 craft breweries that are now have a distilling license that are making a canned brandy old fashioned, if not more. But in Chicago, that would be like, what Mars is doing with the Malort Spritz or something. They just what I mean about something that's tied to a location and could go a little bit beyond maybe not national, but could be a strong like what I'd call a regional RTD using regional flavor. I think there's other examples you could come up with for different parts of the country.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
But again, if a Finnish long drink can catch on here and be acquired for hundreds of millions of dollars, couldn't something more local that resonates even stronger here do the same? I don't know.
Curious. And even when those big companies acquire them, they're taking a gamble too, and most of those aren't probably not going to pay out.
Yep.
Even the ones who've gotten to that size are not going to be the people who are making those companies money in decades to come. I'm sure it really is like impossible, I think, to predict that sort of stuff. And it's funny. It's like even those big guys in the acquisitions, they're taking chances. I mean, just look at let's go back to 2015. Let's look at Lagunitas, Ballast Point. Talk about who would have thought that the Lagunitas thing could be effed up the way it was. Like that one seemed like such a sure fire way. And I'm curious if Tony McGee had stuck around, how different that would have gone, because he seemed to get it. It seemed like anyway, and now it's like, man, wow.
I would have never expected the Chicago brewery shutting down. I mean, that was such a big domino to fall, and just I think by the time it happened, I had maybe heard enough just rumblings that it didn't surprise me when it came out. But like a few years before, if you had told me that, I would have been like, no way.
No, when they opened it, when they were doing all those like crazy events to announce the opening, and you went and saw the sheer size of it, and then heard that they were thinking about doing another one just as big near LA or something like that. To think that would be closed in a couple of years would have been nuts. I mean, if you could have shorted the craft beer industry right then, man, I think I don't know if I would have. Sorry, I'm verklempt here. I don't know if I would have shorted it, because I would have thought that the category would have been going super strong still, but I would have thought it would all be owned by the big guys, which I think it essentially is now. But I wouldn't have predicted that this kind of, in a weird way, fall from grace that craft beer has. I think I can say experienced now. Right. I think the most of that fall from grace has occurred. Mm-hmm. The vast majority. And
did you know that everything you've said about Lagunitas, I agree, but did you know that like in the last year they've had a really large resurgence? And you know what they've done?
What?
They pretty much just decided we're going to focus on two things, IPA and little something, and then just the rest of the long tail is not getting much or any attention. They rebranded little something back to the Millie on the box, and it looks pretty. I thought it looked good when I saw it. I was like, that's pretty good. I like that. Good looking box, and apparently it worked. And so going much more to simplification, but less from what made people fall in love with them. All the kind of outrageous stuff they used to do. I miss that stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes, if that is sustainable, that resurgence. And it's funny. It's like I was thinking. I was the words, and I hope they do, were out of my mouth, and then I was catching myself. This was all just in like micro moments, just a few seconds earlier than right now. I was like, I'm about to say, and I hope they do continue to. But then I was thinking, wait, do I? And then it's like, I don't not hope. I'm just completely like agnostic. Like I don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care if they sink or swim. Like
Totally.
just does not bother me as long as they don't, take out other people I do care about on their way,
Yeah.
up or down, whatever. And that's just kind of how I feel about that space now. I'm just kind of much more blasé. I think all my emotion has been extinguished, used up in that space, and very much so on the air of this show.
Yeah.
But interesting. So, where do you feel? Let's talk about beer specifically right now.
Since we're going to switch to beer, I
Yeah.
did bring you one.
Yeah.
And I
Do
was
we need
thinking
some glassware?
I was thinking, up to you. You
Okay.
can decide. And I was like, I had something in my fridge that I just got in the mail. And I was like, oh, this will be perfect to bring to Chris because you always bring me Headhunter very generously. And I was like, this is probably a beer that if you could ask for any beer, like right now in this situation, that you can't get here and would take a little bit of finagling to get someone to send you
Yeah.
some. This is, I don't know if you'll guess it. I'll just give you a quick guess or two. I don't want to waste too much time on this.
Well, I
but
don't.
like,
Here's the thing. I don't want to guess because then if I'm wrong, I don't want you to feel like, oh,
No, I don't.
okay.
It won't matter because I think you'll still be happy when you see it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, I'm guessing it's a California beer.
it is a California beer.
Is it a San Diego beer?
No,
No. Is it a Russian River beer?
it's not.
Is it Alvarado Street?
No.
Oh, boy.
That would be like a me beer.
Yeah, that's a
I
you
talk
beer.
them, but this is
Yeah.
more. This beer comes up on the show. It's one of your co-hosts' favorites.
Well, then I've Sante Adarius.
No, it's
What is
Timbo.
it? Oh, yeah. Nice.
I was like, yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. There's few beers I feel like I could bring you that would make you go, oh.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is
Totally. In fact, I put this in front of a couple of the other breweries I already mentioned. I should have truly thought about me,
That's okay.
not about what you think. So thanks, dude.
So if anyone didn't catch it, Timbo Pills from Highland Park Brewery in Los Angeles.
We can drink these from the can, I
Yeah,
think,
that's
right?
why I was like, yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. Cheers. We'll cheers our cans.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I love this beer.
That's nice. I do. I've said this before on the show, and I still feel it pretty strongly that I do like the regionality of craft beer, and I want that to stay. I really think that is important for craft beer overall. And it's funny because what a lot of people will say, when I tell them that, is like, so if Russian River was coming to Chicago, you don't want Russian River to come to Chicago? And it's very much, I think, similar to like a brewery owner being like, all these breweries selling out is not good for craft beer. And then, if Heineken offers you $500 million saying no, it's like, well, no, like that's the kind of catch-22 is yeah, of course I would want Russian River. Of course I would want Highland Park to be here. But I think overall it's better for craft beer that they're not here. You disagree?
Let me just put it this way. I made both of my kids' baby announcements out of Russian River bottles. And if I heard they were coming here, my reaction would be, Like, I look forward to when I visit my in-laws out there.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't disagreeing. I'm
oh.
just saying, like, I would not get excited if they're one of my favorite breweries. If they came here, I'd be like, I kind of like it's going to not be the same seeing it there. It won't be as fresh.
Yes.
It won't be as...
As a consumer, I 100% agree. As a business owner who knows that I would get that pop, like, it's hard for me to say, like, I don't want, I like that Hill Farmstead is this exclusive, hard-to-get thing. And then, we did an event, and, it was a great time, and people really enjoyed it, and we sold through all the beer, and it was fun.
I think a compromise that I would like to see is, like, and I don't know if this would ever make sense for a brewery like that, but if they did come here, but very strictly draft only.
Okay.
And just, like, that's it. You got to go to the bar to get it.
And why is that?
I just think it gets people back into the beer discovery mode, and I don't know. I've always been a believer that that's how you build a brand in a market. It's the old Yingling model, and many other old school breweries, like they don't launch a market without sending draft first. I like it much more longer term though. Like if I were helping a craft brand expand now, who's not made many out of state moves, I would always recommend considering that like a draft only play but for a lot longer than 2 months, 6 to 12 to 24 even, as a way to truly test things out, get people drinking your beer. I think people are back to discovering beer in the on-premise. I've both read that and have just observed it anecdotally myself, where I think that went away for a while. And now I think it's much more so back from just all the research and publications I read that's like in the last like 2 years or so, it's really on the comeback trail.
I don't think it's on the comeback trail. I just think it's broadened so much because I think the discovery was just so much of a pinpoint of like they were trying to discover what beers these few breweries were putting out these at this time, which just makes it so narrow, and now I think people are not interested in what new IPA is out this week, but like what breweries are here, what beers are they making, and it's a hoppy amber. Weird. Let me try it. I think they're much more open to that now than what hop combination is this latest double dry hopped IPA.
Yep.
Is what I've seen. Again, I have at the same time, I think, really good and really bad intel at the Beer Temple.
Yep.
I mean, I've been sometimes so unhelpfully ahead of trend, and I'm not saying that to like pat myself on the back. It's like it's just not reality, and maybe what I'm seeing will eventually trickle down, or maybe the general market won't ever go in that direction. But a classic example was Hazy, where our customers, us first at the bar and at the store, followed by a lot of our customers, got tired of Hazy, and then Hazy hadn't even peaked yet, in reality to the broad market, and we're like, oh man, Hazy's over, man, and it wasn't even. It was still getting going,
And I'm thinking about it, of course, much different than your consumer. But to take a beer, I think we both like Half Acre's Slow Melt. So what I'm saying is, I think there's a lot of broad consumers out there that love and respect Half Acre, but might see Slow Melt on the shelf, whereas they're used to they're more of a Daisy Cutter buyer, and it just wouldn't cross their mind to grab it because they could just grab Daisy Cutter, but they're at a restaurant that has one beer per brewery on, and they see Half Acre Slow Melt. Okay, I'll give that a try. Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's different than Daisy Cutter. I like this. And then more. I just think like that kind of chain of events is becoming more frequently. It's happening more so now.
Interesting.
That I think the on-premise is back.
Yeah. And hopefully that continues to grow, and I really hope that happens. So you do a lot of... So, all right. So anyway, with beer, before we move on, like, how are you feeling about the beer market? You're feeling good about the craft beer market, or?
I'm feeling pretty good about consumer interest and engagement. I like just people like being... I think I believe what the Brewers Association says, which is that there are more people than ever that would say they drink craft beer sometimes. I think they're just drinking it less often. They're mixing in other things, drinking less overall, all the things that can. But there are more people than ever before that would say, "Yeah, I have an IPA a couple times a month," or at least like that are, familiar with it and would identify as someone who's like, "Yeah, I like craft beer more than ever." But overall, there's just too many things going on that are making it, more competitive. Less frequency to how often to the volume happening behind the scenes with it. So as a result, I think you have tons of breweries who are just facing this problem of underutilizing their facility. And what people usually say is they have tanks to fill, they have debt to pay off. And that's all true, but the way I think of it, just from my experience at Revolution, and what can be the most painful is when you have a team that's not utilized. You have to pay the amount of people it takes to run your canning line and run the brewery. It only works if you're canning 4 or 5 times a week. And if the volume's slow to the point where you only need to can 2.5 times a week, then you can't afford to pay these people, and then all of a sudden you can't give them the hours if they're hourly, or you can't keep them utilized.
Sure.
And so, like, that is, I think, and maybe an even more common pinch point of all. Again, it all ties to everything else I mentioned, but it's just, all these breweries are in this spot where they just need more volume that, heck, they could mostly break even on, but they just need to utilize their team to fill it out and to stay busy and all that. And so I think that's like, it's just not usually framed that way. It's not that different from what people would say. Why are all these team ups happening? Why are all these combinations?
That's exactly
happening?
where I was going.
But that's what it is. You have one puzzle with a chunk taken out of it, and you have another that can serve as that missing
yin and yang,
new piece, and they plug in, and now does that mean that it's going to work long term? No, there's more things that still need to go right and continue to pushes behind both brands, and that gets more complicated when it's all happening out of one facility. Can you keep all the things intact that made this brand special and made it desirable in the first place if it's all happening in one place? Those are all like questions to ask and reconcile among yourself. So. And they're all different. I think some are, going to make it work, and others are not going to put everything they need to into this new kind of team up model.
Of course. I mean, any relationship is I mean, the fact that on paper it makes sense is only one part of it, because there are still people involved in markets and everything like that. But so what you were saying, I'm assuming one of the places you were thinking about, and certainly what jumped to mind was like, okay, so something like then the Half-Acre Maplewood is what makes a lot of sense.
Kind of. I mean, they're different from a lot of these because Maplewood didn't make their larger scale beers already. So I think this was more of, Half-Acre probably had, I don't know, 40% of their facility that was like, man, we'd be in a much better spot if we were making 20,000 more barrels.
Right.
Maplewood, who makes approximately 20,000 barrels, was making their beer elsewhere. So that team up made sense from a different standpoint of what if what you're paying to a contract brewer is now kind of combined in some form of whether it's a joint venture, merger, whatever. However that's set up structurally was a little bit different than Maplewood having a 40,000 barrel brewery and only being able to crank out 20,000, and Half-Acre being in a similar spot and saying, hey, let's say goodbye to one of these and do it together. That's how a lot of them happen. Whereas Maplewood, they never had the asset in the first place to deal with that.
Which makes it make even more sense.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm not defending that one just because it's locally and I'm a fan of both breweries, but that one just truly felt different for that reason, that in almost all cases, one brewery is walking away from their brewery and to move into another one. This one is more of walking away from a contract relationship and combining that with another. And
then you've got places like what's happening with Firestone, where they've bought they're acquiring brands now. So they've acquired Trumer and they've acquired Stone recently, and they're under the Duvel umbrella, which itself has acquired a whole bunch of breweries around the world. And you seem to be pretty pro about both the acquisitions, the Stone and the Trumer, based on your social media anyway, or my interpretation of it. You seemed pretty
well. It was more
pretty
that
glowing, I think.
In both cases, and Mike said something on here that wasn't correct. But
all right. We have to stop it here. Mike has never said anything not correct.
Well, no, but when the Trumer one happened, because this was before Stone, I said that I assumed this was going to happen, meaning Trumer
was going to sell.
Gambrinus needed to, exit owning this brewery in Berkeley, and I made the assumption. Mike said I must have known something. I'm like, well, I didn't know anything. I don't think Firestone approached them and convinced them to sell. I think they were on the block, and probably went to all the breweries, Firestone and other potential suitors, Sierra Nevada and on down the list. And I think, like every 20 or 30 or 40,000 barrel brewery in the Bay Area, it doesn't work. Like the math stopped working for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody of anywhere near that size felt the pinch of not enough volume. You need X number of resources to make this amount of beer, but you're not making enough beer to pay for all of those resources that you need. And everybody kind of met that reality over the last few years as everything got more expensive. So I am making the assumption that the Gambrinus company decided they need to get Trumer off their books, and Firestone was the most interested. I didn't, have any inside knowledge of anything like that. So my positivity toward it was like, oh, well, if they're going to find a new suitor, would be probably my favorite one. They probably could have possibly picked. So that's the standpoint I was coming up with that one. Stone maybe a little different.
Yeah.
But with Trumer, I was like, and that just comes from, how many times I've listened to Matt Brindleson on podcasts, gotten to, whether it's talking in person, and it's not someone I'm like a friend with, but I've just, interactions over the years, and mostly just like listening to him on shows like yours and being like, that guy loves Pilsner.
Sure.
And that guy wishes they could sell more Pivo Pilsner than they do. And do you know how much Pivo Pilsner they sell? Like 1,000 barrels.
Right, not
which,
a lot.
Is not a lot. That's about how much Pilsner Revolution sells, approximately. So for an almost national-ish brewery, not a lot. So take a brand like Trumer that's 30 times that or something like that. And that's an interesting asset to acquire for them. And there's just nobody I would trust more to do all the right things to not change it and to say, the last reason we're doing this is because we can cut costs out of it. We're doing it because there's 30,000 barrels of beer that's mostly sold in California, just like Firestone is this massive brewery, 440,000 barrels. I forget whether that's last year or this year. But 83% of that is California.
Yeah.
So like almost all the beer they sell is in California. So to acquire a brand like Trumer that's also probably a similar-ish percentage of all California, you add that on top, and you think, where is Firestone going to have a really deep sales team? Of course, California. It's not going to be in Illinois where they sell some beer. It's going to be that home base where it's all sold. So to plug Trumer in there. Now, if Trumer was in Texas, like Shiner,
right?
Like Firestone buying Shiner makes no sense. Firestone buying Trumer, to me, just made all the sense in the world. So when I saw it, I was just like, wow, there's not much to object to here unless you want to get into a water conversation and all that. I'm like, well, that I can't speak to. I can't defend how...
Or ingredient in general, maybe.
Their ability to change the water to, I'm sure they can get it as close as possible.
Sure.
Can it be exact? No. But will it taste different? I don't know.
I think...
But just on paper, I was just like, oh... I was like, I'm happy to take am I bummed that a brewery is closing in Berkeley? My wife went to school in Berkeley. We go to Berkeley all the time. So this was like close to home in terms of like it's a place that we go to every year or two. No, I wasn't, excited about any of that.
Of course.
But I was just like, well, if this thing was like on the path to closing and it was just whose hands is it going to fall in, I'll take Firestones over just about anybody.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with that. I think they have the most chance of not dropping the bag, so to speak. But I'm still personally not incredibly optimistic about it. I think it's going to change, and maybe not for the worse, but how could it not?
I could see it having a different impact here versus there. I could see it being potentially more positive in California because of Firestone's strength there versus lack of strength here,
Sure.
here in Illinois, and not being able to have much muscle to put behind it.
Right.
Here, that's more from selling logistics and all
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah, that's more
market power,
sales
market power.
success.
Yeah,
But
growing
yeah.
interest in it.
yeah, interesting. I mean, we're going to see very soon, I think, what the early returns look like on the change in flavor and stuff like that. But
Yep.
it'll be curious. I mean, there's some things I would like to see them change. I'd like to see them get away from those damn green bottles, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
I asked that. That's not going to happen.
Right.
They're going to stick with them.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like that is iconic to the Austrian brand.
Yeah.
They do some in brown glass in Austria, I can say, not the pills, but yeah, interesting. And it is pretty iconic. People think of it in glass.
As a packaging nerd, I'm wondering if they'll stick to green bottles but use the
Stubbies?
stubbier bottle that Firestone. Like, do they really want to deal with 2 bottle heights in their facility? Maybe. I don't know.
Right. There aren't many. Well, no, I guess there's some. A stubby green isn't as. I mean, there's obviously Heineken, but yeah. Usually, I associate the greens with long necks for whatever reason. I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. I will say we are already talking about if there is negative quality change, what we will do here, or negative pricing change. I mean, they were very aggressive with their draft pricing. Trumer was here, so curious to see how that might change with Firestone Walker.
Was keg freshness ever an issue with?
No.
It was always in good shape.
Yeah, it was always in good shape. Yeah, never that I can think of ever having to worry about it. So, but it'll be fun. To see. But yeah, part of it is just when something like that happens, it is a brand and a recipe. It isn't a place anymore. So it definitely has a different. The American Trumer, I should say, has a different place in my mind anyway. And then even more so is Stone, which to me is now just straight up a brand now. I mean, it's now been passed along 2 places. It sounds like the brewery in Escondido. Like, what is happening with that brewery in Escondido? We've talked about it. Like, so what is happening with the production capacity and also the Stone beer garden in Escondido, like the original? Do you know?
I believe it's not owned, and therefore it's. I
heard it was like split, where like the production's going to be with someone, but the beer garden will be with Firestone and Stone. But how can that be? There's like literal glass, so you're sitting here having a beer, and behind there is where Sapporo's made. Like, it can't be.
I think that facility is going away.
Yeah.
I don't think it's Sapporo's. I don't think Sapporo's keeping it, and I don't think Firestone needs it. And so, my understanding,
they certainly don't need it.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily an instant thing, because there might be a lease involved where it might make sense to, let's say, hypothetically run the beer garden for X amount of time until they can get out of their lease. But what I do know is production is moving to Paso.
Yeah.
And that's. Then there's all these smaller locations that they can keep running. Some of those are just like hospitality company run. Some are ones that they actually run themselves. I imagine those will stay Stone, and not everybody's like, oh, is it going to be when people say is it going to be like half Stone, half Firestone? I don't think any of these companies actually want to do that or think that's a good idea. I think it's like no. We're buying a 250,000 barrel brewery here. We're not doing it to split time with our other brand. Like, we want this brand is very large in San Diego. Like, not as, what it once was, but it's still very large. And I don't think they're trying to dilute that further by having these hybrid tap rooms.
Sure.
I don't see that.
Yeah. I don't necessarily either. Let's take another break for a moment or two, and then we'll come back. My guest is Doug Veliky of BrightBev, and we'll be right back with more of the Beer Temple podcast. Okay, we're back with the Beer Temple podcast. My guest, Doug Veliky of BrightBev, is here. We were just talking about, well, all things kind of beer, and you were telling me that there's something, some news you want to break. You want to break some news here. Is that right?
Yeah, just like one of the fun startup companies I've had the chance to work with over the last few months. It's I get to work with another friend of the show, Jacob Sembrano, who's very well known in the Chicago beer scene and seems to be stacking medals with every competition that happens. Started working with him and founders of this new company that have a pretty fun proposition that's it's kind of a blend of the THC beverage space and the non-alcoholic beer space. So it's called, I brought a test can to show you, Chris. It's called Herb Light.
Okay.
And the can is very much like a nostalgic lager. However, it's has the taste, so it's non-alcoholic, has the taste of beer, therefore is not technically a beer, so you'll see it called like a brew, but it has 1 milligram of THC, so pretty much the lowest dose possible. So when you think of like most of the hemp beverages on the market are, especially the ones that are like selling the fastest, are pretty high dose as far as like 5 milligram. A lot of times I think the hottest seller would be 10 milligram. The kind of occasions people are drinking this are oftentimes like a nightcap, night at home, sitting on the couch, drink one of these, whereas this is meant to be more of a social beverage in the scene that a non-alcoholic beer might play in, just like an all-day barbecue where you want to, embrace the beer occasion, have 3 or 4 or 5, but have a little more function to it than a non-alcoholic beer would, but keep it low enough that it's not going to get you super high either. So it's like a light beer taste, 1 milligram of THC, 40 calories, so it's not super filling, but has that familiar light beer taste. So
interesting. The branding is very, very much like a Miller Lite, like an old, like the retro Miller Lite cans, and
the Natural Light one, if
Natty
you know that
Light.
old one.
Yes,
like
it's a combination of those two.
To mind,
yeah, and it's interesting. It says it's a lager-like taste and a crushable, super low-dose beer-styled beverage, which I think that's a little tongue-in-cheek. It sounds very much. And they have a whole, from the low-high hills of Chicago, Illinois. Interesting. And they're telling you, basically, that this is... So they're going after what I think a lot of people were saying would be the ideal in the beverage world for a canned THC beverage, which is something that you can just like have many of and kind of figure out your dose based on that. I don't really drink these, but I am going to taste it, especially since it's 1 milligram. I've only had, I think, a half a can of a THC beverage ever. But, I mean, I think I'll be fine with this one. I mean, just to see how it tastes. Am I allowed to taste it?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I mean, it tastes like a kind of like an NA lager, and it's brewed, and it has barley and hops, and
has barley.
Yeah, barley hop extract. It says. Yeah, interesting. Manufactured.
So with
Herbert's beverage. Okay.
With non-alcoholic beer, the knock on them, especially when you think about distributors who, let's say, have a brand like Athletic, do I really need to carry 6 brands, points of differentiation? A knock on NA beer can, just from a volume standpoint, is that people tend to have one, but they're not really having a bunch. And a lot of times people who are, not in a situation where they want to drink alcohol, but are in a situation where people are having multiple drinks and they're continuing their hang.
They don't want to look square.
They would love to continue drinking them. And this, gives it some function, not, an amount that's going to get you high. But then even with the 40 calories, it like keeps it low. So it's a new space we're exploring. And,
Interesting.
It's been fun to be involved with.
Yeah, interesting to see how it goes. I think in theory, that's what people want to do, is they want to be able to kind of manage their how high they get and how they get high. And I guess to some people, managing that is, crushing down a 5 milligram, 10 milligram, 25 milligram, and that's just what they want. But you would think that in time it would grow to a more, slow and steady kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And there are people doing that already. There are people, I don't think people are doing 1 milligram, but they're doing maybe 2.5 or 2 milligrams and stuff like that. So interesting. And is this planning to hit the market soon?
Yeah, so this is the first very small batch, something like 80 cases. So just a lot of sampling out folks, but it's going to hit a few bars here soon, and maybe some bottle shops as well. So
interesting. Okay, cool.
How big of a presence has the category become in the shop? Is it
pretty sizable? Bigger for us than. I think seltzer ever was, alcoholic seltzer. And then also, I'd say, NA has definitely been a slow burn that's like continuing to grow over time. But yeah, definitely a thing for us. And it's interesting to see how people interact with the category. There's some people who just buy the 16-ounce super high dose can, and there's people who buy the Choom little guys that are low, and there's people who buy the 6-pack of the ones that are in between, like Reverb. So
do people come here just for that, or are they usually buying some beer and some of that?
Usually beer and that.
Oh, they buy both. That's cool.
But there's definitely people who just buy that, like just buy THC beverages and stuff like that.
So like with this, which will come, it's going to sell in a, I'd say, unfamiliar format because, there are 12-pack variety packs out there. They're just really expensive. This is going to be priced more like a craft lager would be, like in the $19.99 give or take range for a 12-pack of these. Obviously, that's what it would need to be for people to get the value. But if you figure that is also what a NA beer 12-pack of, say, Athletic would sell for, and this is an NA beer
value add
with a plus. So we call it like NA plus. But then the challenges become, and it might be a different answer in the short term than the long term, where do you merchandise it? Do you put it next to the NA beers, or do you put it in the THC section? Because that's kind of threading the needle between the two.
At our place, those two are right next to each other, so it's not a problem. The not beer section.
Not beer. Cool.
The cold cans of not beer.
Yeah.
We also have canned wine right there. So,
do you sell them at the bar?
We have, I think we have like one. We get asked very infrequently for on-premise THC beverages. We get asked, but very infrequently. I mean, pales in comparison to the NA that we get asked about.
Yeah.
So it's definitely more of an off-prem thing where it moves. It definitely moves. Yeah,
cool.
Significantly. Yeah. And I know other bars have like THC and stuff like that, and it might just be, I don't know, just a personality, bar to bar personality type thing.
Yeah.
So
it'll be fascinating to see what happens with this countdown to November, where we're going to find out if these will be allowed beyond that.
I know.
It's unusual circumstance.
Is unusual, totally. So I wanted to ask you about, as someone who I think has really done an exceptional job, I'd say probably better than anyone in the beer space at building a online brand. How do you see the relationship between your online social media personality and your business? And I'm saying that as someone who is in a similar situation and kind of uses it explicitly, definitely for business sometimes. Will do posts, obviously, all the time about we're having trivia night, we're having this night, we're having whatever. And then things about this new beer came in and I'm excited about it. Maybe that's a little bit in between to things where it's this is just what I'm thinking right now. But even that to me is having an effect, positive or negative, potentially towards the business. So I'm just, what's how do you, I don't know if that's something you don't want to talk about, but how do you think of your social media presence? I know you're pretty devoted to it and have been for a long time with definite results, but it's not something I think I've talked to you about specifically in this way ever before, so I figured I'd ask you.
The good part is what I was doing on social before I was a partner in a startup business is everything that made sense to continue doing was what I kind of already was, which was talking about trends, talking about news, and really trying to help people understand, at least from my vantage point, the kind of why behind it. Why is this trending, or why is this trend interesting, or does this have the makings of something that with a lot of legs to it? And then on the business side, being able to let's say two breweries merge, being able to kind of break down in a pretty short amount of time, let's call it 2 minutes, help people who are curious about the industry understand why that's happening and some of the pieces that go into it. By doing that, if you think about some of what I explained about what we're doing professionally, is we're helping new startup brands carve out their route to market with beer distributors. We, of course, want to work with brands that have a proposition that we believe in, that we think they're going to do well. So me putting content out there about all trends, not just the ones I'm hottest on, but just anything I see is this has something behind it, I'm going to probably make a video on it. You don't necessarily know, or you might see whether, in the way I talk about it, whether I'm bullish on it or this is a thing. This might not be my thing, but this is a thing. When those do well on social media and I get 200, 300 comments, you can really learn very quickly and efficiently, okay, there's really 5 comments here. There's 200 of them, but they're all saying one of 5 things. And by doing that, you get a pretty complete understanding of the different types of ways people react to a given thing, whether that's pickle beer, low ABV, like a 2% lager, by almost like exercise, by making content every day or every other day and trying to put something out there. And if I do a good job on the video, the better job I do on the video, the more people are going to see it. It's just going to work better and I'm going to get more feedback. Then I developed this ammunition to talk on this topic. And I feel like I can then explain the 5 common reactions and kind of rank them and try to bucket them into, how to get past the objections for low ABV, for pickle beer. Because when you talk to distributors, which I do for work, you're going to get all kind of objections. So when you're building a deck and planning a presentation, the best thing you can do is get out in front of those and not wait for them to start stewing over it while you're presenting. You want to get out in front of it. So by making content, I'm able to, A, see how people react to something, gain some expertise into the consumer side of it, how they're going to react to it, what different people are going to say, and then be better prepared to help a brand in that category with their own education journey they have with their future consumers of just how best to explain themselves, what to prioritize on the packaging, on the messaging, website, posters, all the assets they're going to make. Figure out what is the most important thing to the consumer and how best to structure their messaging. Mm-hmm. So there's all these advantages that making content helps me basically do my job. And then so like I said, I have the short form video content, then I have the longer form Beer Crunchers newsletter that is where I am not limited to a couple minutes and can really use charts and use some data. Sure. More easier, break things down. But it all helps me do my job, but then occasionally it also is the type of content that a beverage founder would follow, who's a potential client of mine, because unfortunately, I wish there were more because I'd love to follow them. There just aren't that many people making beer, business, beverage content. There's some, but there's not a lot. So it's not that hard to get an audience with them because it's free and it's out there. It's like, if you're in the business, even if you hate me, why wouldn't you follow? Because there's just not much else out there as a quick way to get something you might have missed because trying to follow the beer news, it's just all kind of scattered different places. Some of them have pretty expensive paywalls that not everybody can afford, and so there's not a ton of places to get stay updated. And as one-ish person, 1/2, you can't cover everything. That's the challenge of it. What I do is not complete. It's just what kind of something I feel like talking about on a given day. And thankfully, I like to talk about even things like Busch Light. You brought up Busch Light. I didn't even have to. I like making a Busch Light video every couple months because it does well. It has a huge audience. It's usually something interesting. Has an indirect tie-in to other things, but by broadening the audience of what you talk about, more people are going to discover your account, and then they're going to be more likely to watch a video on something more niche or narrow. Mm-hmm. So if you only talk about things like cold IPAs that have only thousands really know about, you're never going to get hundreds of thousands of people seeing a video of yours. So you have to find the topics that can occasionally open you up to a bigger crowd by it being a broader topic. So I always try to kind of go up and down the spectrum. I'll happily make a video I know is going to do bad because I just think it's an interesting niche topic, and then other times I'll back all the way out and talk about Modelo if I think it's interesting enough.
Yeah. Do you ever feel conflicted or apprehensive about posting and how it will affect your business? I'm, again, talking as someone who has to deal with that sort of thing. Although, in a way, I think it's maybe easier for me because my customer ultimately is the consumer, not the brewer. I mean, I guess they could hate me so much that they would ban me from carrying their product if I were to say something that, really upset them. And that would, I guess, have could have, hit me in the financially, to some degree. It would be hard to imagine unless I was really, really I'd have to really work at it. But for you, I could see it being worrisome because, I guess potentially everyone who isn't currently a client of yours is a potential client of yours, right? Do you ever feel like you are nervous about saying something negative in your promotions, or do you just be like, you know what, I do the Michael Jackson beer writer thing where it's like, I just focus on stuff that I like, and not to put words in your mouth, but
I do not ever honestly think about I never worry about losing a client. I would much rather be myself,
Yeah.
and people's reaction be like, well, he's not holding anything back. That's Doug being Doug, and I got to respect that, even though I didn't. Like, one of the things that drives me crazy the most is so many people reach out to me with something nice to say, but they always start it off with, I agree with almost everything you say, or I agree with most of your content. I'm like, you don't have
Yeah.
to say that. I don't expect nobody should
Right.
agree with 100%
Right.
of what I say. But you also shouldn't like hate me because you disagree with 10% of it. Like it's like, that's just how this
Whatever.
goes. Like,
Yeah.
be open-minded. Like, just listen to, But the thing that's newer to me is having a business partner, and I have to make sure any like goofiness that I used to put on display is not going to. That's what I think about more. So I don't think about potential clients. I just think there's enough in the sea that as long as I'm being myself and not being a jerk, that'll all work out just fine. But I do have to think about like, well, I don't want to embarrass my business partner, in some way. Like
Right.
that.
Have one of his friends or one of his colleagues or someone that he's working with being
Yeah.
like, this is your partner?
Yeah, exactly.
Which I don't have to worry about that.
And I do still like to make a pun. One of my signatures, if you will, is like to end a video with a dad pun.
Yeah.
And that's where I continue to, be my jokey self and just kind of exaggerate the dad sense of humor. And so I don't think twice about doing that. But, we work with big distributors around the country. So some people have said like, oh, you just are all pro distributor because you work with them. And not a lot, like one or two people have said that. And I'm like, well, I'm actually kind of pro distributor because I worked at one for 8 years. And I just like grew, that's how I learned the business. So I grew to appreciate what a pain in the butt operating a distributor it is and how hard it is and all the misconceptions around people think that it's just raining money. And it's actually, the P&L is like a lot tighter than people realize and how much it's built on volume. So when trends go down, it really affects their business in a big way. So it's like I'm more so I'm just appreciative of what a delicate balance running a profitable distributor from a scale standpoint can actually be. So that's why, I don't ever get in on the distributor bashing, but that would also be bad for business as well. But it's not something I've ever done, and because
No.
it's just not what.
No, I've known you since you worked at a distributor, and I don't remember you in public or private ever bashing distributors. In fact, a lot, and that's one of the easiest things that a lot of people do, myself included. And I think sometimes you're, a counterpoint to that, and always have been. So just curious, something that I've thought about as your, how you earn your keep has changed, how that has affected your thoughts around your content and stuff like that. Because for me, it's always been pretty stable, and it was something that I thought about and kind of made a decision about right from the get-go, and was just like, well, this is just what I'm going to do. And now I have kind of, I'm like, I've pretty much made that decision, and I'll move on. But there are certain things where I've been like, well, this is what I thought, but I'm not going to post about this. I don't think this is a good idea for me to post about.
Yeah, I mean, when I started my Instagram account in 2013, and when I did, I didn't know a ton about beer itself. I had been working at a distributor for 4 years, so I knew a lot about the nuts and bolts. But I was very much an enthusiast, showing off their beer halls, showing off going to a brewery for a release, and flexing a rare barrel-aged beer like a lot of people were back then. Then I got the job at Revolution, and then it became more of like, I always like wanted to work at a brewery, and now that I do, okay, now I can like work in some behind the scenes things that I don't see anyone else that works at a brewery sharing. I could start sharing some of those things that Josh, the owner, didn't really care. It kind of helped them indirectly. So it was more of that. And then I was in a financial role then, and then I became in a marketing role. And so, of course, as what I'm doing professionally changes, the content has always changed. Like, I wouldn't encourage anyone to waste their time doing this, but if you went back and like looked at the content has always changed with what I'm doing, and now I'm doing something different. So the content was naturally going to change a little bit with it, but I don't think it's all that different than what I was doing 2 years ago in terms of like predictions, or this is an interesting thing I'm starting to triangulate that a lot of breweries are releasing something very similar here. Here's how they're doing it. Here's how they're doing it. What do you all think of this? Type thing. Just I love to connect the dots and find 3 different announcements that seemingly look different, but they're actually very related, and then try to tie them together. That's the thing I do on Beer Crunchers a lot, is find similarities in things that on the surface look different. And that to me is like not work. It's just like enjoyable.
Yeah.
That's like the hobby side of this industry. That's always been a hobby of mine.
Right.
But it all kind of just being a presence for people who are fans, work at a brewery or a beverage supplier who just aren't in the room where it happens and will welcome another person explaining something and be like, oh, I never thought about that. And to people that are actually decision makers, like that's just like a range.
Yeah.
And I try to like find a style that has a little bit of something for each of them in a way. I'm not necessarily thinking about that on each post, but that's what a lot of people have told me. They're like, you do this, and it's like kind of makes like a consumer might be interested, someone who works in the industry, or someone that's a big decision maker. They all, for like a slightly different reason, might find interest in that 2-minute video.
What do you take of the fact that breweries are now reaching out to you ahead of public announcements to see if you want to like be part of that initial announcement? That is something that I've taken note of, and being like, wow, that's crazy. Not crazy like they're crazy for doing it, but like, whoa, Doug is now one of the people that breweries are going to like break news and make announcements. What do you? I'm sure you've thought about that. Like, what do you think about that? That's pretty interesting.
I don't love doing it. But that's partly because when they do that, I have like 24 hours or something to get it together, and I usually just can't work on that kind of timeline. And it's not really what I seek out doing. I prefer to.
It's much more of a journalistic thing.
I prefer to explain the news, and the reason I think they're reaching out, and some have told me this directly, some have said, something along these lines, but they want the announcement to explain the news. Whereas I'm fine with being last to get to this. Sometimes a brewery will buy another brewery, and it might take me a week. I'll write it down on my notebook, like make video on this. Then I'm busy doing kids sports and all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, finally I have like the 30 minutes it's going to take me to jot some notes down, film it, edit it, add the subtitles, add a caption. All that just takes time. So I don't really seek out being first, and I don't want to, but this doesn't happen a ton, but it has happened probably 5 times in the last year or year and a half, something like that, where they've presented to me because they just thought I would put a thoughtful spin on it. Not a like total puff spin, but like they'll explain to me why they needed to do this, and I'll say, well, that makes sense. I could explain it in my Beer Crunchers-y way that kind of hits all 3 of those audiences. So this would make sense to a leader, but this would also make sense to a consumer that just doesn't want to read a press release, but wants it from an independent source with a little more experience behind it of why this potentially makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's a shame in a way that there isn't more, like that there's no Josh Noel anymore or people like that. Yeah. Which is where I think those announcements, I would like to see them come, because I would like to see you come later down the line and talk about it personally. I just find it interesting that breweries are coming to you, and I think it says, and nothing against you. I mean, you can't prevent or whatever. They're coming to you. Do you want to do it? And you decide yay or nay. It says something about the state of beer journalism or lack thereof right now.
It's almost dead.
Yeah,
it's just about gone. And there's awesome paid journals, like Brewbound does a great job. Beer Business Daily does a great job. But those are understandably not approachable prices for a 2,000 barrel brew pub brewery who wants to stay in tune to some degree, and that's almost like that's my people.
Right.
And I don't mean just 2,000, but the let's call it the 15,000 barrel brewery and smaller is my biggest, call it quote unquote customer.
Yeah.
And I'll just I'll be honest with you. If I got an email right now from a brewery that I really like a Firestone or someone else that size that said like, we'd love for you to break the story, my reaction is, the reason I might still entertain it, and I've done it before, and have also passed and just been busy. I've been on vacation sometimes when it's happened. It is an awesome way to grow what I'm doing, because that becomes a much more shared newsletter, shared link. So people are going to send it to a bunch of people and be like, "What is Beer Crunchers? Oh, cool! I'll sign up. This is where this story broke. Great,
Right? That's who these people went to.
So yeah.
I mean, that immediately gives you a certain level of cachet.
Yeah.
I think the fact that this brewery came to this person for this announcement.
Yeah. So writing about beer is brutal. So building an audience, especially once you've kind of hit all your easy wins, all your layups is really hard. So when you have a chance to do that, it's hard to also say no to it.
Yeah,
but
it's just weird that because you're not like typically the guy who, and I'm putting this in air quotes, would be doing this typically,
right.
but it's something that I've noticed happening. I was like, oh wow, Doug's breaking this story, or Doug. Sometimes you've told me in the past, like, oh yeah, I was offered to do it and I didn't.
Yeah. So when you have a chance to build, expand your audience, it's tempting.
Yeah,
and
I can see that.
I charge for my newsletter. It's $80 a year, so I try to make it pretty approachable. I'm like, this is what like less than a beer a month, like a draft beer a month. And when you think, especially all in, what that costs. But I tell people this when people reach out and they're like, yeah, I was thinking about signing up, but it was a little too expensive. I always tell people that totally understand, but just realize that I would make more money bartending than I do if I add up the hours I spend doing this and how much it brings in. It's just like enough to keep the motivation and accountability there and make it consistent by having some kind of paid model behind it.
Sure.
If I didn't have that, I'd push it off and it wouldn't happen, or it wouldn't happen with any consistency.
Which is why I have not done that, because I know once you do it, then you have an obligation to do that. And but it's this interesting thing, this content creation, when in almost every instance, and I'm talking about 99 point whatever % of the time, the content creation isn't what's making you the money, but there has to be some
having a microphone.
Love.
Having a microphone, though, as we're talking on now, is extremely valuable, and it's becoming a much more common piece of like forward-thinking new businesses to have like a media component to it.
100%.
Having a podcast to your business, which you've been 11 years into or something like that.
Yeah, and before that I was doing
smart.
videos, I think in 2009? 11?
Wow.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah, maybe probably 11. Yeah. 11 sounds about right. Yeah, I think you're right with 11. I'm going to take one more break. We'll come back and close it out. I'm here with Doug Veliky, and we'll be back with more of the Beer Temple podcast. All right, we're back with the Beer Temple podcast. Anything, Doug, that we've failed to hit on in this past hour or 45? I don't know how long it's been.
I was thinking on the drive over here, like what we love talking about trends, like what trends truly are out there in craft beer. I don't think there's a lot, because I think the focus right now is on like do what you're best at.
Yes.
Do more with less, like put more effort into less things. And a lot of those things already exist probably. Just put more into, surround them with more help, build a bigger, sorry to use a marketing term, build a bigger moat around some of these things that you're most known for and best at. But one that is like really, I've been talking about a lot, and it really is happening. I'm not saying it doesn't have a ton of work in front of it for it to work, is these low ABV beers. And I mean like low, like 2.5%, 3%. Like Allagash just released one. Great Lakes, another pretty big top 50 brewery released Little Dort.
Okay.
They're Dortmunder, but like a mini version of it. And a ton of craft breweries are making a brand that does not look or have the name of their other brand, that's so that it can be purely about the proposition of, hey, this is a beer, but much lower, and it can be its own thing. It's not trying to let's say, line extend off an existing brand of theirs. Seen a lot of those, some from breweries I've just never heard of, but like, decent sized breweries just like making their own kind of spin-off line. And it's interesting to follow. We work with a brand called Small Beer that's doing that with a very self-explanatory name, but they're all in on it. Like that's the whole thing. That is the brand, that is the company, Small Beer. And I think a lot about like if I were still at Revolution and it came up, like, should we do this? I'd probably be saying no, because we're not going to focus enough on it. Like, this just takes so much building to explain it and get consumers over the hump of, like, it's not NA, it's just not as much, it's just like there's a lot of work there. Yeah. So I'm just like, I'm curious, because I'm not saying it can't work. I'm just like, well, that seems hard if you've got all these other priorities and just try to trot this out there. There's a lot that's going to take. And is it worth it? Is it worth it to take your eyes off something else to give time to, a 2.5-3% version of something, whether it's similarly branded or something completely new? That is something I'm seeing, like, really, really a lot of these, more than you might realize. I'm not sure that I have not seen a ton in Chicago, so you might not see them coming into your shop. You tell me if I'm wrong, but just following like national press releases and all that.
We see a few, but not a ton. Yeah. You're just getting what do I think of the trend, or what's?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea, some of the idea behind it is that all the data that says that people who buy non-alcoholic beer, like a strong majority of them, still buy alcoholic beer.
Yes. And
so it's this, well, why have to keep going back and forth when you could make something that's kind of in the middle of it? Mm-hmm. And there's also a term, there's no money in the middle. Not here. That's more about politics and other things. So I think about that, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a fascinating one. I keep my eye on and just continue to see more and more brands. And I think to myself, well, we probably don't need that many.
Sure.
There's probably interest in this, but is there interest in 300 new brands coming on the market?
Of course not.
No. So what's going to happen? So there could be a fallout, and there could be like that was a bad idea.
Bust, right.
And it's like, well, sometimes things aren't bad ideas. Sometimes just too many try to come in. It was what happened with Session IPA. Maybe the Session IPA was actually a good idea if just a handful that decided to make it their number one or number two thing they do could have done well with it. But when everybody says, well, we got to have one now, then it floods, and then it's like, that was a failure. It's like, and that's why I always
also part of the prediction, like, well, this is going to flood, so you got to, everyone else is going to ruin this good idea, which is certainly possible. I mean, I guess for me, it is all a marketing or like a changing people's behavior. It's a behavioral thing more than a product thing, because what I think is you should just focus on making beers that are low alcohol, and like full stop. Like, this is a great beer. It also is this, and then push ABV awareness and time and place for different ABVs is how I would think it would work.
Yeah. Like when it would be helpful to have something like this.
Right.
Like this is where this really comes in handy, on the golf course, here and there. Yeah.
And ABV awareness, I guess, good luck changing how every restaurant and bar and store labels the ABV on stuff. So I guess at that point, you kind of take it on your own to highlight the ABV of your beer, because there are a lot of low alcohol beers that just like don't. It's just not
their personality.
Giant. Yeah, it's not their personality. So so then I guess you have to ride the wave of other people like doing all this hard work and kind of see, because I do think that, I think people like you and I very much drink that way, and have been for a long time. Yeah. Like, like I'll have one more, and maybe sometimes that'll be the Belgian triple, but you got to really be like, I just have to have it. I haven't had one in so long. More often, it's like I don't want to leave yet, and I'll have another. Whatever is. I don't even know what Terrace Bulba is, but it's like, that's 3.8. Okay, I'll have one of them. One of those type deals, and I think that's how it can be. I'd be curious if someone can realistically get it to be like, you know what, today's a 2.5 alcohol night for me. That's a 2.5 alcohol, more than kind of throttling up and down with, a 6%er and a 2.5%er and kind of going maybe back and forth, which I have seen people start to do with NA. Mm-hmm. So, which is new, like going back and forth. Yep. Because NAs used to just be for, alcoholics, like long ago. And it's very much not the case anymore.
Yeah, I think the key is to build a world around it, like to have a brand that's super fun and in the way that we talk about how garage beer, for example, is just doing a lot of fun and wacky things that grab attention. I'm not saying it has to be like silly or anything like that, but in the way that, like, I don't know, the Voodoo Ranger account, you kind of know what it is.
Yeah.
It's a cartoon memes. When they do a press release, it's kind of like a fake amusement park in Napa Valley. It's these things that are like, that make it its own world. And I'm not saying that. I'm kind of saying the opposite of that. But something that's more human, that's built around the times you would drink these things in its own fun way. That's kind of like how the brand how the brand talks about itself, how the founders, what their personalities are like. It all kind of like lives in this like fun world that you would have to create. And I think like it's something that someone could do really, really well, I think, in the way that Athletic has kind of won what they were trying to do. But it's really hard for the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th and 12th ones to replicate that.
Right. I mean, what you almost want to do is create like, well, of course, now I sound exactly like what I was saying people do with Treehouse, where it's like, I want to be like them. But like, you want to find that kind of split the G thing, and you want to be like that guy who sits out in front of sports stadiums and like chugs beer. But but hey, you can do it. There is still a cost. It isn't like chugging NA beer, which is lame. I think kind of chugging beer is lame to begin with, but it's like, all right, there is a cost, but it's only 2% beer, so will you, I don't know, and make that into like a thing where you're showing that like consuming this doesn't come with the same costs as it. And then, not that people are going to sit there and like, tonight we're all pounding beers, but being like, planting the seed that like, oh, right, that person who just walked away after pounding 2 beers is going to be fine. Still. All right. Well, thanks. This was fun. I'm glad we were persistent in making this happen.
Yep.
We'll have to
credit
do it.
To you on that. So.
Yeah. Well, I thought it'd be good, and the Friday after we had lunch beers today. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for bringing that.
Sorry, Mike, but I'll get you some more Timbo.
Right, I know. What he's going to really think that this was intentional, that you're bringing one of his favorite beers of all time to this.
It 100%
but good.
Was. Yep.
Yeah, good. Yep. I'm glad. Anything you would like to say before we get out of here, Doug?
No, I mean, just I've been seeing an uptick in excitement about talking about beer, and nothing. I don't know that we could ever compare it to 2015 when news was happening and people were engaged and ready to discuss. Right. But I've seen a nice comeback in that sense on my own channels. Like, I haven't changed much, like I said, of what I'm doing, but I'm seeing more people, ready to talk beer industry, from, the actual beer itself to the news surrounding it, toward the why of things happening. And it's been energizing for me and gets me personally excited. So
I agree.
I'm glad anybody who's probably still listening at this point is likely one of those people to hear us talk about the industry this long. But just stay positive out there, and I think more good things are going to continue to happen.
Great.
Just different.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks to everyone who has listened. As always, you can shoot us comments via letters and or the electronic letter. The address to our physical location, if you want to send it. We always love getting written letters. It's been a little while since we've gotten a written letter, a couple weeks at least. So get on that, folks. Otherwise, insiders at craftbeertemple.com. This has been the Beer Temple Podcast, and thanks, everybody. So long.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard